Check out the Full Press Hockey Podcast with Jim Biringer, the best in the business. It's going to be great.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Full Press NHL Podcast. I'm your host, Jim Biringer, the voice of Full Press Hockey. I am joined today by American tennis player and New York Islanders fan, co-host, Beyond the Racket Podcast, Noah Rubin. Noah, thanks for coming to the podcast today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, big reason why I want to get you on. I was on Instagram. I saw your story when the Islanders made the playoffs. And I was like, oh my God, this guy's a huge Islanders fan. When did your love for the sport and the Islanders begin?
Super early. I remember going to games at the Nassau Coliseum. I mean, obviously they had some good years, but there were a lot of tough years growing up with the Islanders around that time. So, I mean, there were games that I went to with my father where, you know, we'd be on opposite sides of the stadium, almost having like a conversation. That's how few fans were in the stadium at that point. But we lived so close. I mean, there were times where, you know, I was like, for a 7:30 game, it was like 7:22. My dad's like, wait, do you want to go to a game tonight? And I'm like, sure. And we just like get in the car, be there in 8 minutes from our house. And, you know, it was just, there was something so foreign about the sport to me. I don't know, just the idea of these guys skating on a knife, you know, and then hitting each other. And then we have fights. And I was like, what in the world is this? And being a tennis player, you know, I played soccer and then, I messed around with baseball and basketball, but hockey was just, it was not even close to the realm of possibilities for me. So I just fell in love with it from such an early age. And then I think, you know, the real in-depth, like fanatic in me, Islander fanatic in me probably came out when I took my first break from pro tennis, maybe even around COVID time and right before. But yeah, I mean, I grew up with Pekka and DP and all those guys and seeing those guys play. I mean, that was the OG.
Yeah. I mean, as an Islander fan, I know a lot of fans and friends that I talk to are Islanders fans and people in the business. When Johnny Tavares left, how did you handle that one?
I think it was more, you know, because I wasn't a fanatic, you know, at that point. I mean, you're like, okay, this is a bit fucked up. You know, you're looking at this, you know, it's snaky, but then you're like looking at the reactions from the fans and you're like, oh my God, I cannot believe I'm part of this fan base at times. You know, it's like as serious as it is, like within the realm of sports, it's also like, oh, wow. I mean, this is like life or death for some people, you know, which, you know, I think my wife can attest to that sometimes it changes my mood when they have a bad loss. But I mean, watching, you know, literally like the burning of jerseys, you know, which we saw with like LeBron. And then, you know, it's like, wow, Tavares did that to this fan base. But, you know, I still think that even though, I mean, Tavares is one of the best players Islanders have ever seen at times, I think the team became a much more knitted community post Tavares, post that, and it actually brought the group together in some ways.
Yeah, you mentioned the COVID and when you became a fanatic in the bubble, and I've seen a lot of interviews out there, Barry Trotz, a lot of the players, the tightness of that group because of the ping pong tournament, because of the bubble, they became so close. What did you think of those runs, back-to-back conference finals, and then the year that they missed, did you think, oh, that could have been the year to get even further?
I think it's funny because as an athlete myself, I think I related to the Islanders and like how they played. Like these were like, you know, they use the word pesky all the time. You know, it's like these pesky, grinding, forechecking team it's just going to be a nightmare to play against. And I think the beauty of that was like, okay, the regular season may be an absolute roller coaster because of how they play. And, you know, you're going to go through waves of like, what am I watching right now? But, you know, in a playoffs, when it matters, like you're like, we don't want to play the Islanders. Like that was like the consensus at that time. So, you know, with me, it was like, okay, the way I play tennis, I had to put so much effort and intensity in where, you know, the everyday match was exhausting for me and it kind of beat me up. But like in the big moments, my tennis was something that people didn't want to play against, you know, when I was playing my best tennis. So like I kind of, when I got closer to the Islanders and started watching, I was like, I could relate. And I kind of felt that. So yeah, when that bubble team first came, you could see that there was like buy-in from that team. You know, there was like an understanding of like, yeah, we're not going to be pretty. Our family's not going to enjoy watching us, but like, we're going to win games, you know, and they're going to be 2-1 and we're going to win games. And you think it's going to be 3-1, we're going to score an empty netter. It's never going to happen. We're not scoring empty net goals. Like, it's just all the way through, it's just going to be a pain to watch. And like, I love that. I love that. Like you could see the breakdown and then like the every once in a while 6-1 game that they won because the other team was just broken down completely. And that's what you saw kind of in the bubble and then leading into the following year where you're like, yeah, we can use probably a little bit more firepower, but the buy-in from Trotz, from the players was amazing. And to see that kind of team explode the way they did, and obviously not during COVID, but to kind of get to those playoff games where you always, you think back, you're like, wait, is that the best I'm going to see, in the next few years? And you always think back, and, I got to go to the final Coliseum game, game 6 with the Beauvillier OT winner. I actually went by myself that game. So it's like to go through all of this was pretty great.
It's funny because I was at that game too. Final game. Yeah, I was there. Final game, Beauvillier overtime. Yeah, it's a must. That one was that was crazy. Everybody knocks the Coliseum, but I will say this: it had a uniqueness to it. And when you got to the playoffs, and when you experienced that crowd, they could turn a game for the New York Islanders.
No, UBS is great. It's kind of a pain in the ass to get to right now. Mm-hmm. But the Coliseum, yeah, when that building, I mean, you could probably ask any Islander at the moment, and even, the away teams, they're like, that's a building we didn't want to be in at 1-1 in the third. That was a building that, if there was 2 early goals and the team was on you, you didn't want to be there. I mean, that was just, you felt it. Obviously Beauvillier's OT winner, was followed by beer bottles thrown on the ice. They couldn't even take their, 3-star skate around after. So, that kind of epitomizes it where it's like, I'm almost embarrassed about the fan base at times, but it's also like, yeah, I mean, they die for the team.
They do. I mean, considering when I was there for John Tavares' return with the Maple Leafs, I it was ridiculous. I couldn't even walk across the street from the Marriott. I'm like, oh my God, this was ridiculous. And then the warm up, fans are just out there, the chants, the Leaf. It's like an hour or 2 before game time. And I'm like, this place is already rocking.
And for like a pretty, I don't know, whatever term you want to use for Tavares, he's pretty to himself, shy, whatever the case may be. He knew what he was going to walk into. And I still think it wasn't what he expected. I think it just surpassed expectations with like, oh, this fan base each individual took it so personally. And had to tell him personally from them that he's a snake, the worst human being that's ever lived, blah, blah, blah. Like, sure, should we have gotten a trade for him? Draft picks, whatever the case, 100%. Should he have told us? Sure. But like, it's funny at times, it is everything to some people, which, like yesterday when it's 3-3 and then they scored 2 goals in 9 seconds. Yeah, I felt a personal attack for a second, but you kind of move on after a while.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the New York Islanders, they fall to Carolina 5 games, first round of Stanley Cup playoffs. It's not like they didn't have their chances, though. I personally felt they played a good series. They should have had some bounces go their way. Games 1, they definitely should have won game 2. And then last night, you get back against a good Carolina team. And again, it breakdowns in the second game and in the third and in the fifth game in the third period, we give up 2 goals in 9 seconds. I mean, that's all you need to know about this series.
Yeah, unlucky is not like fully the word. I mean, I think you have to play well to get lucky, certain ththings like that, and you see the bounces go your way. And you saw that, like, you had Anderson basically trip out of his goal to give Cizikas the goal. He tripped out of his crease, sorry. And, from that, the 6 minutes before that was great Islanders hockey, that led to that. So you get a little lucky when those things happen. But, when you're on your heels a little bit, obviously the Canes, I would say, besides being a top 3 most hated team in the NHL, they're probably, a top, I would give them, I'd probably put them above Vegas right now. I'm still have Panthers number 1, to take the cup home. But then, you're looking at the Canes team top to bottom. And like, even with Anderson, he had some great saves, but it just felt like Burns' stick was like everywhere it needed to be at every second. The D is amazing. They get on you so quick. So, the Islanders found themselves like the game 2, which, they had 2 minutes left when they, tied the game up. Like that was a game they probably weren't supposed to win. They didn't have a shot on net for basically 2 periods, besides one disallowed goal by McLean. That was a high stick. But, you look at that and you're like, yeah, maybe they got away with too much at times, maybe not enough. So I think, we have to see a couple changes in the Islanders. I don't think it's a complete blow up. Obviously, you go on Islanders Twitter or Instagram or whatever the case may be, and then you have these clowns that are like, fire Lou and blow up the team. And I'm like, I think there needs to be a little bit of a mix up here and there. I think there could be some fun changes this offseason. But you go top to bottom and there's some nice pieces there, and there really are. But the Canes is a really bad matchup, probably one of the worst matchups in the NHL for the Islanders. I think you put almost up against anybody else, and you feel pretty good about it. But still, you have your chances, and super unlucky goals. I mean, this is back-to-back years now where it was. I think. Yeah, it was the final goal of the series was Canes like below the red line, right? I mean, it was pretty ridiculous. And then, the first goal of this last game with Varley, which just like bounced off the shoulder from a side, like it just happens, a lot of it has just happened. So tough to see though.
Yeah, I mean, I always say PNC is not a fun place to play for teams. I think Lou Lamoriello as a general manager, going back to his days with the Devils in the playoffs, I think has one win as GM of a team against Carolina in Carolina. It is a house of horrors for a lot of teams. Building is loud. It is dumpy. I've been there. It is dumpy outside, but it is loud. But yeah, like I said, I thought those fans are crazy down there. I love Islanders fans. They're great. Those tailgates are great. But, you look at what Carolina did, and you saw, again, you mentioned the changes in the offseason. I know a lot of people looking at Lou and bringing in more offense. I think that's something, going back the last couple of off seasons, I think that's something that they do need to address because they do need to score more goals.
Yeah. I think you look top to bottom. I think the D, sadly you have, Pelech Pulock. I mean, at one point, was one of the scariest lockdown D pairing in the league. I mean, they weren't going to give you the offense, even though Pulock has a 148 mile per hour slap shot that he should be doing only about 16 times a game. He never does. But, they were shut down. You didn't want to go up against them. And then, I feel like, post-injury, Pelech has taken, a couple steps down, sadly. I actually think Pulock played pretty well throughout this series. I think he was number 2 on the list of D-men. I'd put Riley was an amazing get. I think Riley's looking really great the way he skates, sees it, makes really smart decisions. And then you have Dobson, who's kind of, I really love him at times, but, kind of fell apart towards the end of the season and was kind of almost non-existent for the postseason. So, I was talking to my friend about this and, I think Dobson could be, a trade. I think Pajot has to kind of put out there. I think, McLean looks great. He's not going to be a first liner, but I think he's going to take over Cizikas' kind of role. So I think you put McLean third line center, you have Cizikas fourth line. I think it's kind of, if we can get something for Pajot, I know we held off on him, sadly, he's not producing, he fills a lot of holes in the penalty kill, he's putting it on the line, but, he gave up a goal last night, basically kind of whiffing on, I don't know, he took this like baseball bat swing on one that led to the goal. And, he doesn't have the same wrister. Obviously we love the Holmstrom Pajot we thought was going to be the greatest, penalty kill. They had 6 shorthanded goals in the first few games. But yeah, I think you look at that. And then we talked about Brock Nelson, obviously an Islanders legend at this point. But, you're telling me that you can get a pick in 2 young studs right now for Nelson. And you're looking at that maybe that's the chance you take. I don't know. But I think we have to have the first line complete. I think there's very few NHL teams at this point that don't have a complete first line. Obviously we've tried a few things. Islanders have tried a few things on that first line and, don't really have an answer for it yet. So I'd be open to obviously there's a lot of trade rumors about Marner, something like that, breaking up that Toronto team. As much as I love Sorokin, watching him do the ridiculous paddle save at MSG, I got to watch in person. While every other Rangers fan is around me screaming. I'm like, yeah, we just absolutely did that to you. Maybe that's one, you break it up, there's the potential of signing a Swedish goalie. There's a couple solid Bridgeport goalies, if you can get a Marner to get on a first line with a Horvat and, a Barzell, like, do you give that up? Can you give that up?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you look what teams have done around the league. You have to give up something to get something. And look, Sorokin's he's got his new contract, so that's going to be tough. Do you move Varlamov out? I mean, yeah, obviously that fourth line is not going to be what it is anymore. That's going to be changes. I mean, Clutterbuck's probably gone. And like, I agree with you on Nelson. I think that's something you have to look at when you have a guy that scored 30 goals now for 3 straight seasons and has 2 goals in 5 games and is supposed to be one of your offensive leaders. That's a tough one.
Do you wait till he gets to 18 goals, or do you trade him now? Like, when is that time? As much as, you want to hold on to these pieces and you don't want to get rid of them, there's things that I think Nelson does incredibly well and shows up for the team when there's nobody. And then there's also things I look at Nelson, I'm like, okay, yeah, he gives up every empty netted goal. He's kind of the last one on the line. Does he play physical enough? He's sneaky. He has good hands. He's sneaky, great wrister. You're telling me you can get a couple great studs for him? I think you really have to look into that. I think you really have to look into it. And the fourth line, I think there's players. There's players on Bridgeport. I know Wah, hates Gauthier for some strange reason. I think you get like a Gauthier, Fashing and Cizikas, and you're having like a sneaky fourth line there. And then I want to see Ruslan, if we are keeping Nelson, I want to see Ruslan with like a Nelson Palmieri, see what he can do with good hands, a non-forechecking line. But like, there's a few good players. You make one trade. And then on the defensive side, I mean, I'm still curious why Aho didn't play more minutes. I don't think he's an outstanding defenseman right now, but I think there's a lot of promise there, where I was questioning Bortuzzo at times, who ended up making some good plays in the end, but is a little bit on the slower, older side of things.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, so again, if you're looking, let's say Dobson's out, you have Riley, you have Aho, you have Pulak, you get one more, solid defensive pair in there. And I think there's a couple good Bridgeport guys that can fill these roles that I don't think would leave gaps. I mean, you have Bolduc, you have, a few others that, this team is not a blow up team. And you look at what Lou has done, he does not deserve nearly half the hate that he gets online. I mean, the things that he snuck, getting rid of Bailey contracts, getting Bo Horvat, like so many little things he's done. And you look at him and people are like, he's so old. I'm like, he is doing probably the best he can right now.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to that. I mean, I saw his end of his tenure in New Jersey.
Sure,
there were some questionable. Some question. The big thing I have with Lou is he always kind of sticks to his guts, and he's like, yeah, this is the way I did things prior to the cap coming in. We need to build but in today's NHL, you need scoring, and like that's just the big. Yeah. That's just like the big knock on him is he just won't sign anybody or go get that score that you need, and I think that's the big thing. And I think he sticks around. If they had not made the playoffs this year, I think that's maybe a change that they make. But I think there's going to definitely be a transition personally over the next couple of years in the offseason. I would have been
more okay with the Lou hate if he didn't get Bo Horvat. You basically took the fan favorite in Beauvillier, and then you had at that time one of the best prospects in Aturatu, and for him to make that trade and basically say, yeah, I know Beauvillier cemented his Islanders legacy with that one goal, but we need a Horvat. So like when he did that, it did prove to me enough that he was open to certain things like that. Do I believe deep down he would trade a Sorokin? No. I mean, do I love when he puts 7 years on Mayfield? No. Like there's no. And like, did I think at the time, and I still do, I think Engvall at the end of whatever his term looks like in the Islanders, I do think will end up being a sneaky good trade. I really do believe that. I think he brings some intangibles, and we saw he was one of the best players kind of during the postseason. He had the puck on his stick and making some great plays. I mean, yeah, I don't like him circling in the defensive zone, all he does. But, so that's why I'm like, the Lou hate is so just unwelcomed.
Yeah, no, it's from my end. It's just some constructive criticism for Lou because I've seen him through,
especially with the Devils. Yeah.
The years. The nickname I had for him, Cheap Lou, for years for guys that got traded when I was had my fan glasses on. And I can understand some of the decisions he's made. Again, I agree. Like the Mayfield contract, 7 years is like, all right, whatever, I guess.
Yeah.
But I get term and AAV, you got to keep it down. I mean, to me, I think the Islanders are always that team that if you look at the best of the murky middle, as they like to coin it, they're the best of the murky middle. And I think they could sneak into playoffs every year. And they're, like you said, the way they play defense, they have that goaltending. They can add a piece offensively. They're a team you really don't want to play.
No, I think, and I think I want to see Patrick Waugh like in a full offseason. There are certain ways that I never played hockey, so everybody, whoever listens, and I'm doing more hockey podcasts now. I'm sure people tell me shut the fuck up, but like, the way that people see the Islanders play hockey, I think there needs to be a bit of a change. I think there should be lines of forechecking, and you'll still have that in the third, fourth line, in some capacity, especially the fourth line. But I think the way they, exit the defensive zone, they're big off the glass team. Everybody's, putting in the air now. It seems pretty easy to do because everybody is doing it, and it seems like they're getting out of the zone much more efficiently. I think the dump and chase at times, you get another offensive weapon on that first line. The Barzal, Horvat, whoever it may be on the first line. That's not a dump and chase line. I mean, these are talented. I mean, Barzal can make anybody, lose an edge. You have Horvat that is a bull who can do some sneaky stuff. And you put somebody else there, that is a sneaky line. And then, a possible Nelson Palmieri Ishikov, that's a passing line. So I think Waugh can see that and be like, hey, we got to change. We're not the 2021 Islanders anymore. We have some real talent. Let's skate. Let's move. And then you get a Riley, you get Aho. These are guys that can skate with the puck. I think you have to see more of that and kind of a little bit get away from this ground and pound, because not everybody in the team is built for it. Most of these guys are not built for that anymore.
No, I agree with that. I think they're not built for that. And yeah, like you said, you have Barzal, Horvat, you have those guys that are offensively gifted. Romanoff has been a really good addition for the Islanders on that. If Dobson can, he had an off year, okay, great. End of the season wasn't great, but he's one of those guys that, has potential to even be one of the best players, best defenseman in the league. So again, a full season, full off season. I look at it this way. I don't know if you're going to see the same results, but you see similar results in Vancouver with Rick Tocchet when he came in. Now you have a full off season. I'm not saying the Islanders are going to jump to first place in a Metro event. I'm not saying that, but I think you can see a more of a progression, and maybe not up and down as much with Waugh in a full offseason, because let's be honest, he really didn't have a lot of time, practice time. It's really morning skates, couple practices here and there, guys are off, to instill all the systems that he wants to do, because he is a good coach.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think he sees, obviously sees the game very well. He's on the goaltending aspect of sides, but I think Islanders, as sad as it say, he has to have to adopt a little bit of that Canes mentality, just in the fact of like, whoever has the puck, we're on them. I just think the defensive zone are just so accustomed to backing into the zone, letting guys kind of just walk in, just get on everybody, especially in the neutral zone. Just get on them, make every pass a nightmare. And if they manage to get out of that situation, the man-on-man, then yeah, they might have a chance. But then you have Varley or Sorokin. Like, I just think you change the mentality of how they're playing a little bit, and you're seeing a team that is a nightmare. Then you have Barzal like lifting sticks and having breakaways. You're having, a McLean that like knocks a guy over and takes it and is a 2-on-1. And I think the team has the talent, like top to bottom. Yeah, you could definitely, I would love to see two good changes in the offseason, but you look at it and you're like, yeah, they might be, I know they're considered this old team. They're not that old, they really aren't in some cases where, you're looking at a lot of these players now, they're playing until like they're 36, 37. You can have these guys play. They might not do the same minutes. So when you're looking at the core of Barzal, Horvat, Dobson, Sorokin, you're in that 28, 29 range. It's okay to have a few 30. You get a couple young guns in there, which I think we'll have, whether trade or Bridgeport. And again, I don't know why everybody seems so hopeless all the time on these Instagram forums. Not the reason I deleted Twitter. I was actually for one day, I was on one of these Facebook groups, and they're like the most wild groups in the world. And I was like, this is like not okay. Just left them. I was like, I'm done with this. So I'll do the Instagram stuff and every once in a while, and I'll put like my 2 cents in, of like, I'll try to be level-headed
Yeah.
idea, but it's funny.
Yeah, no, I mean, look, the Islanders, you always one of those teams that you like to root for, one of those teams you like to watch because you never know what's going to happen. Like like you said, up and down season. Lane Lambert, they fired, not Patrick Waugh comes in again. Lou makes these sneaky good moves that because he keeps it so close to the vest, you don't know what he's going to do.
No idea.
And then boom, out of nowhere, these moves happen. And look, I think that overall, I think they had a good season. In my opinion, I think they got into playoffs. Again, finishing third in the Metro, I had them more of a bubble playoff team. But again, when Philly loses 8 straight, you take advantage. Yeah, exactly. You take advantage of it. And you mentioned Kyle McLean. And look, I watched his dad for years in New Jersey. Kid has a nose for the net, and he can score goals. And when the Islanders came into Jersey, one of the Devils' final home game, and he scored, I felt proud for that kid because he grew up in Jersey. So he's got a nice future ahead for the Islanders.
Yeah, I mean, there's more than enough to look at. You get a few picks. You don't know who's going to pan out. I still like Holmstrom. I still think that the guy's a good hockey player. I think he's kind of been asked to be the savior in some ways of like kind of that sneaky goal scorer. And I think if you get him on a third line, you get Holmstrom, Engvall, and McLean on a third line, like I think that's a sneaky good third line. And I think that could be really well placed. So when you look top to bottom at the lines like that again, I don't think again, two changes and you're feeling pretty good about the team. And I don't care if they're winning the President's Trophy. Like, I don't give a shit. Like I just, you look at the Rangers playing the Canes, like I really do think the Canes are going to take them down pretty handily. And, nobody's going to remember that they won the President's Trophy. Nobody cares about that.
No, I know. No one cares about the President's Trophy. No one cares about finishing in first. Again, one team wins the Stanley Cup at the end of the year. That's all anybody cares about. No one cares about 32 teams don't win the Stanley Cup. Only one team does. And look, the Islanders are back. So, it's good to see. So, yeah, I'm really impressed with this. And, what final thoughts on the season for the Islanders?
Yeah, I mean, it's just fun to have more games. I think that was the beauty of the offseason, just to have a couple, it was nice to see them sneak out. I would have loved, not to end it the way it did, kind of like the way it did last year. But yeah, I mean, I'm in Miami right now, so I'm hopefully going to get out to one of these Panthers games next week, just to get, just see what that. I was actually last minute, I was almost going to go and would have loved to see them take down Tampa just to kind of end that because I had enough thoughts about Tampa taking out the Islanders with a shorthanded goal in Game 7, which that was the year that when you look back at what year, the Islanders played Montreal in the finals and you're like,
yeah, that one would have been the year. Yeah,
that probably, I'm not saying that they're sweeping the floor with them in 4, but like you look at it on paper, you look at the play that was being made at that time by the Islanders versus Montreal, and you're like, I don't know how they would lose that one. I don't know how they lose 4 games against Montreal at that point. So that was probably the one you look back on. And it's kind of sad. I do think that they can make another run. I don't think this is a blow-up team. I think the next 3 years is kind of that block, where, if they're not, let's say they're not trading a Nelson or a Palmieri, like, the end of this real solid core, where you have 8, 9 guys that are really good. I think that ends 2 to 3 years. I would give it 3 years. So I do think there's another run to be had. And, I would love not to play the Canes one of these first rounds and kind of switch off. I know Gary is never going to change how the playoffs work. It should go to the 1 through 8 kind of play. I think that's the best way to do it and mix it up. I mean, it's fun to watch Florida, battle it out, with Florida, but like, yeah, I don't know. I think we got to see a little different competition going on, but yeah, I'm curious to see how the Rangers kind of take on the Canes. I think it's a really bad matchup for the Rangers and how they play. I think there's going to be a lot of 2-on-1 Canes play, and it's going to be how Igor is kind of standing up to it, how Quick is going to stand up to it. But it's crazy, like how much I hate the Canes and the fans and the players and the calls they get. They hold every time. Like, I'm still a hater of Rangers forever. but it's like 55-45. Like it's really
Wow.
close of how, that's how close it is with how
Wow.
much I've seen, just even Rob Brindamore, like with the other series, last year, and Tomahawk, he's bringing out this award when he broke his wrist. It was like lightly tapped. And then you have Mayfield that got absolutely smacked. He's like, oh, we didn't see it. It was nothing to see there. And I'm like, I couldn't handle it anymore from him. I really couldn't. So yeah, I would say Rangers is still number one in the hating book. Canes are an easy number two. And then I think you put, Pens and Toronto there. I think Toronto's number 3 on everybody's list anyway.
Yeah, absolutely, because of the history with the captain and everything that happened with Tavares. But this has been a great chat today, Noah. Thank you so much for coming on the Full Press NHL podcast today, talking Islanders hockey.
Thanks for having me.
Hey guys, get this on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts, along with YouTube, Full Press Hockey Podcast, and it'll be on Instagram later as well. Guys, take care. Noah Rubin, American tennis player, New York Islanders fan, and Behind the Racket podcast. Check them out. Guys, take care.
Barry Trotz, Nashville Predators, making sure you're listening to Full Press Hockey Podcast.